Larry Wollersheim is back for a second interview with us on our channel. In the first one, we talked about his time in Scientology and taking on Scientology through the legal system, and he eventually won a large judgment against Scientology. In this video, he's going to talk about healing after leaving Scientology and also other cults. These are his opinions. We want to state that up front. They're not necessarily Janis or my opinion, but we let people tell their stories and give their opinions on our channel. You can challenge them yourself as well in the comment section after the video or down below. We hope you find this video entertaining and informative. Hi, everybody. Welcome to our channel, Scientology Peeling the Onion. My name is Mark Fisher. I'm here with my co-host, Janis Gillham Grady. How you doing today, Janis?
Good, Mark. Good day, everybody. My dogs ran off barking during the intro, so I quickly had to run off and get them in here. And I sat down right as camera came on.
I appreciate that. I appreciate that. But anyway, we love Rocky and Moose, so no problem with that. Anyway, we've got a great show here. We did an interview with Lawrence Wollersheim, Larry Wollersheim, a few weeks ago, and it was very well received. And we talked about his getting into Scientology and then leaving and then taking on Scientology in court and his court fight, which took years, but then he finally did get a settlement, a large settlement from Scientology. But we're going to talk about something else here, which is what he wanted to talk about, and we're very interested too. Right, Janis?
Yeah, we're interested in what he has to say in regards to healing after having left Scientology, what he went through on having healed, and his adventures as he goes along that way and the people that helped him and so forth. So this should be very, very interesting.
Yeah. Well, without further ado, here's our guest, Lawrence Wollersheim. How you doing, Larry?
Hey, everybody.
Hi, Larry.
How you doing, Larry?
I'm doing well. I'm in that place where you're got your home up for sale, where you're fixing everything at the last minute, super busy, but in all the important things of life, I'm doing well.
That's excellent. That's excellent. Well, we're going to carry on here. And you promised in the last interview a story called the lipstick story. And so we thought we would start with that and go ahead and get started.
I'm glad to share it. The first thing I'd like to say is I might use a few politically incorrect terms because it's a very bizarre story that only you have to encapsulate to get the full meaning of it with certain words. So there's this gentleman named Eddie Walters who was the guardian in Las Vegas. And I met him once casually when he was at my attorney's office. And he was helping my attorney, Charlie O'Reilly, understand what kind of attack Scientology is going to put on the law firm and him personally. Mm-hmm. And somewhere in that briefing that he was, giving to the law firm, he spoke with Charlie privately and he told him the story of the lipstick. And I had the privilege of listening to this story one night at this Japanese restaurant up on a hill in San Francisco when Charlie and I were alone. And it's pretty amazing what happened. And I'll just get into it. At the time of Quentin's death, Quentin Hubbard, the L. Ron Hubbard's son, Eddie Walters was the guardian of Las Vegas. And Eddie Walters did the basic investigation, collected the body. He had information that nobody else had on Quentin's death. And I have no idea why Quentin died, how. I have no conspiracy stories. I just know that Eddie Walters was the guy who had more information about Quentin's death than anybody else.
Right.
And then Eddie became disaffected with Scientology. Now, he eventually left, but there's some parts of his story that need to be filled in. Eddie Walters used to be a pool hustler. He was street smart, hard as nails, dealt with criminals probably a good portion of his life. And he also wasn't the most attractive man in the world. So you wonder why I'm telling you why he's not the most attractive. The story will fill it in as we go along. But anyways, Scientology was very worried about Eddie Walters when he left, and him having all of the real story on Quentin Hubbard's death. Whatever it was, Eddie Walters knew more than anybody else. And this was a gigantic problem to Hubbard and Miscavige and everybody else.
Right.
Now, Eddie Walters, this isn't politically correct, but Eddie Walters was also a sex addict. That's what we would call him today. In the old days, we would call him a man whore, or whatever words you want to use.
Right.
Eddie Walters couldn't say no to sex. Now, part of Eddie's background is he had a wife who he feared more than the Guardian's office and L. Ron Hubbard. He had a wife that he could not upset, he could not mess with, because this woman could really ruin Eddie's life more than Scientology. But Eddie knew that he couldn't resist sex, and he knew that Scientology knew that from his folders, and that they would definitely throw sex at Eddie to blackmail him, to ensure whatever he knew about Quentin and whatever he knew in the Guardian's office never went public. So Eddie started cooking up this plan, and he came to a brilliant idea, and he then sat back and he said, how long before it happens? How long before this unfolds? So after a few weeks, he's in this lounge. If you've been in a Las Vegas lounge, you have a mix of tourists and hookers and musicians and gamblers, and it's a very strange combination of people. And Eddie's sitting there having a drink, and these two gorgeous women come up to him, absolutely gorgeous, and they say, hey, let's get together. Let's have some fun. And when some gorgeous women come up to you and you're not really attractive in a Las Vegas lounge, most people know the next question you have to ask is, how much?
Working girls.
Working girls. So Eddie says, how much is this going to cost me? And these girls go, no. We find you cute. We love you. We like the way you look. We think you're interesting. These two have been given a large amount of money already, with a big promise of a huge bonus if they can get him to what they want him to do. So the girls say, no, there's no charge. We just want to have some fun. Let's go up to our room and let's have some fun. And Eddie can't say no. He just can't say no. And he knows what's going to happen. He knows they're going to try to film him. He knows absolutely. So here's what he says to them. He says, okay, I'll go along with this. I would really like to be with the two of you, and we'll have a really good time. But you have to promise me that I'm always on top. It's just my freak. It's my little freaky thing. As long as I'm on top all the time, I'm going up there with you. And we are going to have a time. We're going to go crazy. And these girls, like, they're seeing dollar signs. This is your freak. You want to be on top? Jesus, that's nothing. Literally they're going bonus time. They can't wait. And absolutely, you can be on top. Not a problem. So the girls take them up to the room, and there's a big mirror, there's a camera hidden behind the mirror somewhere, and he knows it. And he says to the two girls, he says, okay, ladies, remember I told you I also told you, I'm at this point, he says, I'm also kind of shy, and I don't want to take my clothes off in front of you. So would you be okay if I go to the bathroom and take off my clothes, and then we're going to get busy? And again, the two girls are just seeing dollar signs. You want to take off your clothes in the bathroom because you're shy? Get in there. Get in there. You know, so Eddie goes in the bathroom, jumps up. He says one more thing to the girls, according to Charlie. He says, ladies, feel free to start warming things up for me. But remember, you promised I'm always on top. And they reassure him again. No problem. The two of us are going to be on the bottom, and you just do what you want to do. So Eddie jumps in the bathroom, takes off his clothes, jumps up on the bathroom counter, bends over, looks in the mirror, takes out a tube of lipstick, and writes something across his butt on one cheek and then on the other cheek. And then he jumps back down, goes back in the room, and gives these girls a great time. And all of the time, he's on top, and his butt is flying up and down in the air. And these girls are like, okay, bonus time. This is the easiest money we've ever made. Eddie is going, yes. And then they all separate, and that film goes to Miscavige, and I don't know who else was in the room with him, but they're watching the film, and they're going, we got you, fucking Eddie. We got you. You know, they're all, you know how that gloating is when, you know, you've stung somebody and you got control of them, and now you can blackmail them and twist them. And they're watching the film, and all of a sudden they look and they see something on Eddie Walters' ass. So they stop the film and they get up close and they, you know, look at it frame to frame, and they go, holy fuck. You know what it said? Fuck L. Ron Hubbard. At that moment, they knew that if they sent that film to L. Ron Hubbard, they would all be on the RPF, that Hubbard could never see that film.
No one could.
No one could. That film, that
use it, yeah.
So that's Eddie Walters outsmarting Miscavige, Hubbard, the whole Guardian, OSA, whatever was going on at the time, getting laid on their dollar and going on with his life. And if you, from everything I've heard more about Eddie from the people that have known about him indirectly and through articles. Eddie Walters was that guy. I mean, this guy I think, Janis, you mentioned he might have been in that film about the pool hustler, Fast Eddie Felsen with Minnesota Fats. And
well, that film was about his life as a hustler.
Okay.
It was about him. Yeah.
Okay. So,
yeah.
And everything that Charlie told me in his interactions, this guy was just, I mean, he was a pit boss, because I saw an article. He was a gambler. He was this guy just had the ability to do something like this and pull it off. And it's the story that Scientology doesn't want you to know. And here's a suggestion. If any of you are going to go protest at Scientology, bring a tube of lipstick with you. And just hold it in front of these Scientologists and ask them, do you know the lipstick story? And if you don't, go look at this. And, you know, they'll come watch the video, and that'll be a whole nother thing. There's got to be some joy in dealing with Scientology, because there was so much pain and suffering in Scientology. But
right
now I've completed my promise. The most important. We got a question. We got a question.
Janis is going to tell her. There's Eddie right there. Go ahead, Janis.
Yeah, that's Eddie with me and his assistant. That was taken October of 2022 at my house.
Okay.
I used to go to lunch with Eddie, and he owned a attorney firm here in Vegas. And he was a pit boss. In his younger days, he hung out with Frank Sinatra, Sammy Davis Jr., that whole crowd. He hung out with them.
The Rat Pack.
And he used to even say, the Rat Pack. And he used to even say, and he would say it to Sharon, his assistant, don't let anyone dig up my front yard. Now, he has since passed away. He passed away last year in September. And he actually used to, every time I had my YouTube channel going, Eddie used to listen to it and play it. And he'd call me and he'd talk about it. And he'd say, well, as soon as I get well again, I'm going to come on your show and we'll do a fun interview. But sadly, he passed away before that happened.
Yeah.
But he was a good friend, and we had many laughs together.
He offered a lot of help in my case and in helping the law firm and Charlie O'Reilly prepare for what they were going to deal with the retaliation and the dirty tricks. I mean, he had the master list of dirty tricks. So we did say we were going to talk about healing, and tell me when I should start or how you want to roll this out.
We're ready to go. No, we're ready to go. Rest in peace, Eddie, by the way. He was a good guy. But yeah, no, we'll get started. We wanted to talk about, a lot of people commented on when you talked about brainwashing and what you learned from Margaret Singer, and the psychiatrist or psychologist who was an expert in cults. And then we thought we would talk about healing, like you said, after Scientology, because not just Scientology, any cult really, you know what I mean? It's, it's the same type of behavior, I would imagine, right, Larry?
Right. It's similar. Some aren't as intense and well organized as Scientology. Scientology's, it's like German organized. It's got that kind of every detail. But right. So should we start with Margaret Singer, the samurai grandmother?
Yeah, there she is right there.
Yeah. Larry, the first time I heard Margaret Singer's name was L.R.H. Hubbard and Mary Sue having a discussion about her. And I never heard what was said exactly, but Hubbard mentioned later on about this psychiatrist who was very damaging and attacking Scientology, but the Guardian's office was going to be taking control and getting that under control. Yeah. So I'm very interested in what you have to say, because I was very brainwashed and in Scientology. So I grew up hearing her name as someone anti what I was doing.
I hear you. I have to be grateful because I may be the most privileged ex-Scientology member as far as healing goes, because Margaret became my personal therapist and personal educator. And I had the privilege of working with her for some 20 plus years as a patient and then as a protege, where, at FactNet, she helped co-found FactNet. She's the unknown co-founder of FactNet. We kept her name out of it. But she had so much knowledge about cults, mind control, coercive persuasion, that it just made my education, healing, and therapy so much faster than anyone I ever met in Scientology. It's like she was the recognized world authority on cults and mind control. She handled the Patty Hearst case when the king of Saudi Arabia had his kids taken by a cult. You know who they call anywhere in the world? The European royalty, their kids get crap. Margaret Singer. She was flying all over the world, helping, very powerful people get their kids back. But I wasn't a very powerful guy. I was just a ex-Scientology guy who was kind of, hanging on by the skin of his teeth. But she took me on, and I'll share the process I went through. Her nickname is I'm going to spin around for a second. Her nickname was the Samurai Grandmother because she was the most courageous older woman I have ever met in my life. There may be others in different areas, and I don't deny that. But she wound up living alone because her husband and children couldn't take the Scientology harassment. That was a factor in them getting 2 places. And this woman would go up on the stand, and she wouldn't let their attorneys intimidate her. She wouldn't let their dirty tricks on her and her friends intimidate her. This woman said, this is a very dangerous group, and people have to understand how it works and what they're doing. And, year after year, she just stood up. She stood up, and nobody could buy her, nobody could scare her. And that's very rare in very talented people. When I say very talented, Margaret Singer published 160 some articles on cults, mind control, coercive persuasion. Not many people publish 160 articles. Now, I should talk about how I healed, okay? And it has like 8 levels, and it goes over, 20 some years, 30 some years since I've left. Some people have said I'm the person that is most out of Scientology they've ever seen. Okay, and that's healed the most from, the threats, the phobias, the fear, the thought loops, all the craziness. I've had that said about me. I didn't stimulate that comment, but I've had it said several times, and it's probably because I was privileged to something very few other ex-Scientologists have been privileged to, is having the world's leading authority for 20 years work with me. So I'm going to share what she shared and what I've learned in that process. And I'll start out with one: education. If you've left Scientology and you have not gotten the basic books, Cults in Our Mists, if you want to pop that up, I'll name a few of them. Barefaced Messiah.
Yeah, I've got that here. Hold on.
Okay. Piece of Blue Sky. Ben Corridan's book, I forget the name of it. Madman.
Messiah or Madman. Yeah.
Okay. These books, but particularly Margaret's, do not start with Margaret's and then go with the other ones, will help you to understand the dynamics of cult manipulation. They don't go as heavily. Margaret goes into mind control, but first is the sociological elements of cult manipulation. And that's kind of education level 1. Then education level 2, very few that I have ever met have done education 2, which is understand how mind control and coercive persuasion works. Margaret made me read scores and scores of published papers, that were used in the CIA and used, with other professionals around the world on this is how mind control works. Here's first generation mind control, which is the old cults, the Egyptian cults, hashish assassins, where they had cathartic experiences and drugs to make you think you died, were reborn, and you have a new identity. And they subjected you to all kinds of stresses in a controlled environment. Then we had to learn about second generation mind control, which is the 1950s, 60s Russian, Chinese, and Korean mind control, where you capture someone and you deprive them of sleep and you subject them to such stress that the only solution to get out of the stress in a cathartic moment when they're not rational is to force them to accept this new identity, which it's such a cathartic release. They accept it so wholeheartedly, they actually believe it. They attack the identity in second generation, but second generation is very expensive. You have to literally capture the person, imprison the person, and have handlers with them 24 hours a day to break them down quickly to get them to that cathartic moment where they then accept the new identity and a new reality and believe it. And so that's second generation. Third generation occurred in the 70s and 80s with the Moonies, the Krishnas, particularly the Moonies and Scientology. They adopted first and second generation, but they were smart enough to figure, well, we don't have to completely imprison them. We don't have to lock them up in a cell. We just isolate the environment mentally and physically as much as possible. And we don't have to, keep them awake 24 hours and starve them. We can just put them under so much continual stress and fear
Yeah, I was going to say, was Werner Erhard was an example of that, right? Because they would do these seminars for a whole weekend, and they wouldn't let people leave, and people would urinate on themselves, right? I mean, it's that type of thing where they were under control for a short period of time, and that was Est from what it would go.
Yes, yeah. And third generation, Est was a baby version of what was going on in the Moonies and in Scientology, but. So in third generation, you don't have to imprison. You can do it differently. You can just do continuous long-term stress and isolate the person as much as possible. And there'll be a cathartic moment where they'll believe, what's going on, and they'll change identities. Now, fourth generation, which I actually suggested this to Margaret, because part of what Margaret did to me is I had to read all these published studies. And then I had to read all of these doctoral theses of all these people around the world who were coming up with new theories about mind control and how it works. Fourth generation is occurring right now. Fourth generation uses AI and computers because in mind control, you have to know the person's beliefs, you have to know their attitudes, and you have to know what their values, and you have to know their identity. And once you know those four things, that's what you start attacking. But you can't attack identity right off. People will not let you do that. But they might let you attack their thoughts, opinions, and ideas. And once you get in there, you go to the next level, which is beliefs and values. And if you can get in there, you're setting them up for the attack on their core identity. But when you take AI against and put our computer power together, and you put money in the ruthless people who want to manipulate, and just remember, half the population has an IQ of 100 or less. They do not think in subtleties or discriminations or a continuum. They think black, white, right, wrong. And these techniques really work well on people who are not discriminating thinkers, who don't understand propaganda to start with. So again, here's where we are, but I want to go back to your healing process in Scientology. Okay. You've gotten out, you've been damaged. The second level is therapy. You can learn everything in the world, but you've had specific traumas in Scientology. You may have come out with PTSD. You have some stuff that, by looking at it from the context of understanding how you were manipulated and how mind control works, you're going to clean that stuff up pretty fast. Okay? But you need to find a therapist who understands you were in a cult and you were in mind control. If you go to a traditional Freudian or this or that or the other thing, it's going to go slow and painful. I'm going to tell you that right now. Forget about it.
Let me make a comment on this, because I've thought about this over the years, but I go like, should I go get counseling? And then I'm going like, how am I going to find a counselor that would understand what I went through? And then I'm not spending all my money indoctrinating them on what I went through. Do you know what I mean?
Right.
It's a difficult thing for people who've left cults because they don't know who to go to,
Right. There is one thing I forgot to say in the beginning, and then I'm going to go back to the next level of therapy. I'm speaking my opinions today. Okay. Right. And I believe you two are also speaking your opinions. And the reason I'm saying that is Scientology loves to bring up lawsuits and everything else. So we're having a big opinion sharing session. Right. And, I'm saying hi to all the new Scientology lawyers. And you really don't want to bring me out of retirement. Okay. Just leave me alone. I'm doing a couple interviews for Janis and Mark. I've been out 25 years. I'm well rested. I got a new team. Just let it go. Do what you're going to do. You got bigger fish to fry than me. I'm so far down the list. And I'm going to disappear after these interviews with Janis and Mark again, as I've done for 20 some years. Sorry about that, but I needed to put it in for all of us.
Oh, I agree with you. It's good.
Okay. So therapy, don't cheap it out. Don't save the money. Find a therapist who has worked with cult victims and understands mind control. And it won't be a long process if you've done your educational step ahead of it. Okay, the third level occurs after you've had your therapy and education and you're bumping along in life, and you're going to bump into these Scientology concepts. I call them thought loops, ridiculous ideas that you heard in Chinese school, and you repeated over and over again. I think there's one, certainty is power. Isn't that one of them? Or power is certainty, something like that. These little thought loops, and they work in an environment where everybody agrees the thought loop is true. But guess what? When you step out in the real world, people will look at you like, what? They don't agree to this craziness. And Scientology puts all kinds of induced phobias and thought loops. One of their famous induced phobias is if you go against Scientology, you're going to get cancer, something bad's going to happen to you. Okay, I'm 20, 30 years out of Scientology. I'm still here, healthy as a mule,
Yeah.
So
another one, Larry, is if it's not true unless it's true for you. Unless it's true for you, it's not true. But if you don't know what the facts are, how do you know that it's not true?
Right. And an open mind, if you're open-minded, it's dangerous. Well, Remember last video I told you that Scientology pre-screens for suggestibility. Mm-hmm. Open-minded is a 4 or it's a 1 or 2, highly critical or unsuggestible. So open-minded people, they can't get them into trance. That first trance that occurs in what's that?
OTTR0.
Opera by dupe.
Yes. That you keep doing that. It's a form of mesmerism. They want to get you into a trance.
Janis said something else. Which one are you talking about?
I said opera by dupe.
Both of them. Okay. The big win in OT0 is you
That's the first thing you do.
Right. You get the big win, which is exteriorization, which they mislabel as something special, which happens with psychotics all the time, and happens occasionally in cathartic experiences or in induced trance inductions, that out-of-body state. Opera by dupe is another one. Yeah. If you don't get a big win in either one of those, you're not staying in Scientology because you're not suggestible enough. So
and you're not moving on unless you get those wins.
Well,
right.
Yeah, and you know what? I remember on the ship, Hubbard assigning people who didn't duplicate properly or follow orders. They had to do hundreds of hours of opera by dupe, just going back and forth, touching the wall and going, it was like, I was happy I never had to do that. Right.
Again, that's a control technique, and it's a breakdown technique. It's not and the one thing I got to you said something earlier. You said a phrase, if it's not true for you, it's not true. That phrase is really dangerous because it eliminates you from examining facts.
Right.
Your opinions are opinions. And you know what they say about opinions? Everybody's and most of them stink, I left a word out of there. You can figure out what word I left. Yeah. So these things, that's your third level of healing. You got to go back and data strip.
One other thing?
Yeah.
Can I say one other thing too? Miscavige, as a control mechanism, would make people, just like Janis said with Hubbard, after we left, he would make OTs, people that were up the bridge, he'd make them do hundreds of hours of CCHs, the control, whatever it is, all the that type of touch the wall, this and that, again, to control them, right?
Right. Well, he saw Hubbard do it, and he wasn't creative enough to come up with it himself, but he was smart enough to imitate.
Anyway, go ahead. I'm sorry to interrupt.
Imitation is the lowest form of compliment. So that's level 3. Level 3 occurs randomly in your life as you bump into things, and all of a sudden you're doing something and you remember a Scientology concept and you think, I'm going to use this Scientology concept right here to make my life better, and all of a sudden it ain't getting better. So I call it false data stripping, real false data stripping. Level 3. Level 4. Level 4 may be one of the most single powerful levels of healing. I recommend that every ex-Scientologist sue Scientology and get your money back. And if they harmed you, sue them for the damages that they did to you. Justice changes the dynamic. You have been the victim of Scientology, and Scientology makes victims a very bad thing. That's another thought loop, because people can be victimized by greedy, bad people. A woman can be raped. She is a victim. So you have been a victim of Scientology's mind control to take your money and your slave labor. Some of you lost 10 years, 2 years, 20 years. Some of you have lost your whole life, the whole normal life, your whole family, your everything. Sue Scientology to be made whole. And you can do it. The more of you that do it, the more that Scientology will quickly pay, because they can't do more Wollersheim lawsuits. They can't go back into the courts. It's a nightmare for them. They've learned that lesson. They're going to bluff you like they can do it, but they can't. They paid me $9.2 million. That was 8.7 in the judgment and another 500,000 in a slap case. I got to tell you, that made a big difference in restoring my mental health and restoring my life and allowing me to try to repair things as much as I could, try to live a decent life. And I spent 30 years taking a lot of hits and blows, and so did our team, a lot of kicks, so that a pathway was there. And the pathway is in the documents. All 300 boxes of banker boxes are in University of Alberta with Stephen Kent. Any attorney can quickly grab them, see what we did, and get your lawsuit going. But justice takes the victim who has been oppressed. And when you're sitting in that stand and you're telling your story to 12 peers, and then you get your judgment and you get paid, you are now the legitimate legal oppressor of the thing that crushed you, the thing that controlled you. And the dynamic that occurs inside your soul, inside your heart, inside your mind is so powerful. It makes the trauma and the wound into a strength. Nowhere did I experience that transformation. Like when you pound on metal, you anneal it and make it stronger. And once you've sued them and you've won, that justice, and it goes out publicly to educate other people, it's like the trauma becomes a strength. That's a powerful level of healing. Most people heal to the point of not limping is bad. That's not what healing is about. A good therapist will not get you to limp less. A good therapist will get you to understand the wound, heal the wound, and turn the wound into one of your strengths. That's what a good therapist does. Justice is one of the most powerful therapists that exists. So justice is level 4. Level 5. You ready for this? Acknowledge all of the good that happened in Scientology. You had a lot of bad things, but don't fight the good things. Most of those good things Hubbard plagiarized from other sources without acknowledgement, without attribution. So you probably got some good psychotherapy early on. You probably got some good concepts of behavioral ideas like complete cycles of action, communication, listening. Don't fight the good, acknowledge it completely, but recognize that most of it was appropriated and isn't Hubbard's genius. Okay, the Hubbard genius thing, Hubbard probably was maybe the greatest plagiarist that's ever existed of other people's work without attribution. Because that's one of the things, as you go through life, you start to, read more about where the good stuff of Scientology came from and not where you thought it came from.
This is a good example of this, right? Where that people can find that stuff.
Yeah. It's a very good book. The next level, the 6th level, is you get to a point beyond accepting and acknowledging what happened to you. And it's a very bizarre point. It only happened to me recently. And I call it, you get to the point where you can be, not do, not have, you can be your past experiences. Not think about them, but you can go back to the old org and you can drive around it and you got no negative, no anger, no hatred. You don't want to hurt anybody in Scientology. You don't have to do anything, but you could if you want. I mean, you could educate if you wanted, but you don't have to educate. You're free because the experience has gone beyond acceptance and acknowledgement into a place of being inside of you with no animosity. I mean, no hatred of Scientology, no matter how bad you were treated and how bad they acted towards you. Like what they did. It's just not there. And there's a freedom to it. In the healing, there's a freedom to it that's absolutely phenomenal. Take it or leave it,
Right.
The 7th step is your volition. And many ex-Scientologists do this, like yourselves and Tori and Spanky and others. And it's, you've fallen down a hole. And there are people putting up a sign now that says, danger, there's a hole here. Careful, don't step in it. It's called education. And to me, it's the decent thing to do to a certain level. You'll do it as long as you need to or when the circumstance demands it. And there's a point when you stop and go on with your life because, again, Scientology had you for so many years. How many more years do you want to, it controlled you, then you fight it. At some point, you've got to say to yourself, I'm done being controlled. I'm done fighting it. This is my life. New journeys, new adventures, new relationships. That was behind me. And it's truly, truly behind you. That's the 7th level of Scientology healing. People try to drag me back all of the time. I get calls on a regular basis. My son's in Scientology. Can you do this? I just refer them to other people. I can't even believe that Mark and Janis, you got me to do these videos. So,
we appreciate it for sure.
Yeah, we appreciate it.
You may not get me to do many more, but
okay.
Now the last thing I want to talk about is OT3 and Ned for OTs, L12, BT World. Okay. And the reason I want to talk about it is because it is the most insidious level of Scientology, and it does the most damage to people. And earlier on, I told you in mind control, you have to attack first their opinions and attitudes, then their beliefs and values, then the big deal is the core identity. If you can attack core identity, you can control that person at a level you will not believe. And you see this evidenced in John Travolta, and Cruz, but they also have all their blackmail in the files, so they have no doubt what happens to them if they step away. But OT3, Ned for OTs, L12, the BT stories, body thetans. Well, just think about this. Up until those levels, it was your imagination, okay, your previous indoctrination into space opera, past lives. You were all primed, and you're highly suggestible because you wouldn't be in Scientology if you were not a 3, 4, or 5 on the scale, because 1s and 2s can't stay, they're gone. And now up until this point, you're creating your own past life events out of your imagination, out of the past space opera. Hubbard's always telling you how it works, and here's what happens in auditing. And you've been drawn into trance so many times in session that you go into trance very easily. So you're in this suggestible mode, and you're set up for years to the shock of OT3. The stories about OT3, the big shock. Well, OT3 is the first time Hubbard really says and evaluates your case and says, it's not your images anymore, it's my image. And my image, the purpose of this image of you're not one human being, you're millions, thousands of beings all stuck together because you were in an electronic ribbon and all this crap from volcanoes and whatnot. It is the perfect identity fragmenter. It's the perfect attack on core identity. He is getting you to believe you are not who you always thought you were, and you're not even one person. Think about it. You're not even, you're millions of people, and they're fighting over your body. And here
they're all influencing you. They're all influencing you.
And they could, here's how good he is, and they could take you over at any time and ruin your life. All these beings, and they're gonna, and I'm the only one who's ever done it. I'm the only one who can save you, and only by doing this can you be saved. So he gives you the ultimate fear. And all the reading I've done on mind control and on coercive persuasion, I have never seen a more brilliant attack, a method of attacking core identity to change who people think they are. I have never, in any of the literature, this is twisted brilliant. So all of this BT, Ned for OTs, auditing them forever, BTs inside of BTs, BTs out 50 billion miles away from you, all this shit. Endless BTs controlling you means endless auditing in Scientology.
Right.
Endless cash flow under fear. Endless crippled people because they no longer believe who they are, and they no longer believe they're not even one person. There's a belief that there's maybe a dominant personality that's you, but that could change at any moment if a BT takes over. This kind of cruelty, this kind of manipulation is brilliant and extremely dangerous. And people that have been in Scientology and have done these levels need to sit down and think about this and recapture their core unified essence, their real strength, and move on with their life. And some of you, go ahead.
Go ahead, Janis, ladies first.
No, that's interesting, Larry, that you bring that up, because I remember as a messenger on the ship, a young kid, I'd done my grades and up to Power Plus, and I never wanted to go on to OT3 because I always noticed people got in trouble. As soon as they hit OT3, they used to end up in ethics trouble, or they'd blow, or case trouble, or get sick. And I never wanted to do it. I ended up doing it later on, but it was just my observation as a kid.
Right.
And then the other part of it too, Larry, which you know very well, we all do, it's kept confidential. Like, you do not know this until you are actually approved to go on to OT3. And then you're put in a locked room with a briefcase that you were supposed to lock or tie around your wrist if you walk out, and you read this handwritten material, and you're basically indoctrinated enough to totally believe the story, or, you know what I mean? And
you start auditing it.
Right. But if people had known this, hey, when you come in, you know what? The reason you're having a problem is you've got all these thetans and spirits attached to you, and we want to handle it. So come into Scientology. Nobody would get near it, you know?
Do you know what they used to call that in the old days? Demonology. Demons have taken them over. Think about it. That was the old one. Now, Janis, you brought up something very important about the people that had problems on OT3. Margaret and I talked about this, but she related it back to mind control. Mind control, first generation and second generation. Okay, and what happened in first generation and second generation, if you did not prepare the person properly and they were not completely suggestible and completely ready for the attack on their core sense of identity, the death and rebirth experience, because OT3 is the death of you and the rebirth of the collective Mishigas. If any of you are Jewish, you know what that means. Mess. So Margaret said that the problem that they would have, and you'd always have to have in first and second generation, a handler very close. Because as you move a person towards breaking down their core identity in this catharsis, and if you don't know what the word catharsis is, you got to look it up, because this is catharsis. This is extreme catharsis. That's how you crack the core identity. In first and second generation, you've got to have these people around them because they watch them very closely. And if they start to go psychotic, because if you don't comply in this cathartic incident, one is the new identity, but the flip side is psychosis. So in first and second generation, there was always a moderator very, very close. And if they saw you going psychotic, they could back things down again before you flipped out and caused a problem, or you went insane and you were no longer useful. And
are you talking about an auditor and a case supervisor?
I'm talking about in first and second generation, they had people around the person they were indoctrinating.
Okay.
Real close. In second generation, with the communist gulags and the thought reform struggle camps in China and the camps in Korea, they had somebody on you 24 hours. And if you were starting to go psychotic, they back off because they don't want you to go psychotic, because then they don't get you to the cathartic change of identity. In Scientology, the going to the examiner is a little way to see if they've got a problem, and you're going to be a problem. But in doing OT3, many people weren't ready for it. Their identity was too strong still. You know, they were not suggestible enough. There was a part of who they were that resisted this new concept, and it's called cognitive dissonance. You know, two things in your brain. I am myself, I am millions of people. I am myself, I am millions of people. I am myself, I am. This will drive someone over the edge, and they would have psychotic episodes. We can go on longer if you guys want to. So.
Oh yeah, no, that's okay. I just was going to say, you know, a perfect example reportedly is Nicole Kidman when she was married to Tom Cruise. She got to the point where she opened the OT3 materials and basically said, "This is a bunch of crap." And then she pulled Tom out for like 5-6 years, and he was disconnected from Miscavige Scientology while they were working with Stanley Kubrick on Eyes Wide Shut. And that was it. You know, as she looked at it, she went, "This is nuts." And then, of course, it took Marty Rathbun and Miscavige and all that to get Cruise back indoctrinated to the point where they're going, "Your wife, Nicole's an SP, you need to divorce her." And they've had control of him ever since. But that reportedly is why Nicole walked away, because she wasn't indoctrinated enough, really, if you think about it, you know.
Right. She wasn't, and her core personality was not so heavily influenced. She was one of the few lucky, but those that do OT3 start auditing it and still have enough core personality that they're in cognitive dissonance, that they're deep down inside of them, they know something's wrong, and it's fighting the auditing. Those are the ones who go psychotic or wind up in ethics or have all these problems, because there's this incredible conflict at the identity level, you can have opinion conflicts. Who cares? You can have idea conflicts. Who cares? You can have behavior conflicts. Who cares? But if you have identity conflicts, the stress is unbelievable. OT3 and Net for OTs have, those are the freak out levels of Scientology, and L12 a little bit too.
I was going to say the other factor that keeps people like Sea Org members in who have been, like, for instance, I went to the Rehabilitation Project Force in 1982, and I had not gone on my OT levels yet, right? And I had doubts when I was sent to the RPF saying, I need to leave. Why am I here? This and that. I was like in inner turmoil. Should I stay? Should I go? But I was indoctrinated enough to think, I'm jeopardizing my eternity if I leave.
Right.
I have not achieved OT yet. I mean, that's how indoctrinated I got. And that's how a lot of these people who stick around for years thinking Hubbard's coming back and I'll stand up, I'll take the abuse, because they're so indoctrinated into this belief that they think they're jeopardizing not just this lifetime, but all their future lifetimes. And it took finally stepping away, like you said, and getting the education, reading Barefaced Messiah, talking to other people about similar experiences and all that we call it peeling the onion. And it takes time for people to get out of that mindset.
Right. Now, the RPF is loaded with cathartic experiences. Cathartic experiences are those really powerful ones that they're going to get closest to core identity, changing who you think you are. Right. RPF, you work all the time, you got shitty food, you're under continual stress, yelling, screaming, you're being worn down, and then you're being slammed with either sec checks and other things. And it's all to drive you to the cognition that you're the bad person. The RPF is designed, right. You're the bad person. Right. Scientology is good. So
and you don't get out until you realize that, and you take responsibility for that.
Right. You're a rock slammer. You're an evil intention person. You're a this. You're a that. You're a DB. Whatever it is.
Right.
They force you into these cognitions that diminish you, and that's how you get out. And anyone who's been in the RPF, just remember, it wasn't you. You were not the bad person. You were not the rock slammer. You were not all these things that they say, evil intentions. It was them, and all they wanted was another slave.
Yeah.
That's pretty much all that I wanted to talk about that. I hope this helps people understand the 8 levels or seven levels plus the OT levels, so that more people can heal and have a great, fun life like I'm having.
Can I make a couple of comments?
Sure.
After leaving Scientology and after a few years, right, I got approached. It became easier for me to spot cults and cultish behavior. I was even organized religion for me. I had somebody that I was interested in. They were born again Christian, but because I was not going to take to that relationship was over with, And then I had a friend get me involved with Amway, right? Amway, which is a multi-level marketing company. I'm sure
you're another cult,
that type of thing.
Yeah.
Well, I went. They dragged me to a national convention in Salt Lake City, and they were all dressed the same. They had to buy books from these
enthusiastic, excited
up that, and I went. I was there just observing as an observer, because I'm going like, this is a cult, just like Scientology. It's just in another form, having to do with merchandising and money. You know what I mean? So it's funny how, it took a while for me to realize these things, but once you've been through it, makes it a little bit easier.
Cults are, Margaret and I used to talk about this. They're dangerous and destructive to the level that they apply the technology of coercive persuasion, social persuasion, and mind control. Some of them do it really well. Some of them do it medium. The destructiveness level is in the technology. It's in the technology, and be discriminating. If there are a lot of cults out there. Some are benign. Some are so weak and ineffective they'll harm a small number of people. Some has the potential to harm the whole world. I got nothing else.
Janis, you got any comments or questions?
No, I think you covered a lot and it was very thorough. So thank you.
Larry, the other thing that we want to talk about briefly for our viewers out there is the subject of connection as opposed to disconnection. And Janis, you said that one of the things that you did for years was you sent people that were still in Scientology cards on their birthday, Christmas cards, even if they were disconnected from you, right?
That's right. I made it a regular thing. Birthdays, Christmas, whatever, I would send them a card. Even Heber, you know, my stepfather. And it didn't matter that I didn't hear back. It was in my universe. I was communicating to them, and hopefully they would get it, and it would help them to realize I'm not a bad person. And it also would put the thought there, if they did want to leave, I was someone that they could go to.
That's right.
And, you know, because when you're in there, you don't know who you can go to. You have no friends on the outside, or if they had left and they were your friend, you now think of them as a suppressive person, and it's not someone you want to connect up with immediately when you leave. So by sending letters and so forth, it makes them feel you're a safer terminal than having to go to an SP. So that's why we're pushing this connection.
Yeah, and we came up with this idea. I offered Janis said he send a card. Like, what could you send that would get through the mail to people? And so we came up with this connection. I designed this mug, which is, it says the word connection with a heart with two arrows pointing into the heart, right? Because you can't tell that that's Scientology or not. It could be a love connection, a family connection, or whatever. Right. But you could buy this and send it to your loved one that is still in the Sea Org and Scientology from you, and they would get the idea of what you're reaching out and saying without it saying Scientology sucks or this or that. It's just it's a positive way to reach out to people. So this coffee mug is available right down below. You can order it from our merchandise store. We also did T-shirts with the same logo as well, so you can wear those if you like as well. And it doesn't have to be necessarily to Scientologists. It could be to your family or your coworkers or whatever. But anyway, we just wanted to mention
people
that we available.
Or people in other cults, like Larry's been saying.
Right. No, that's a great idea. Connection is really important. Connecting back with your family and trying to educate in any way you can. And connection is a form of education. It's a loving, kind, easy to accept form of communication.
Yeah.
We want to thank everybody for being here and watching the show. Please subscribe to our channel. Hit that like button. Janis likes to say rock slam that like button, but hit that like button. It really helps us out. If you have any questions or comments, just ask down below. We, of course, will read them and review them. I know Larry does as well. We got great comments the last time that Larry was on. And then also, if you would like to support our channel, you can buy us a coffee. There's a link in the description down there. You just click on it, buy us 5, 10, 15, how many ever coffees you want. It helps support the channel. We greatly appreciate it. Do you guys have anything else you'd like to say before we end off this video?
It was a pleasure, Larry. Thank you for coming on.
Always.
Thank you. I just wish all your viewers heal as fully and as quickly as possible. And I hope in some small way what I've shared from my experience with Margaret Singer will help that process. And that's it.
Okay, great. Until next time, everybody. Bye-bye.